free will that came up.
Right, which that's correct. So we are.
And so I have a question for you. I'm gonna. There's another thing that keeps coming up when I read.
Right.
I say it in Farsi, then I'm ask you to help me figure out what that third one is in English because I couldn't figure out. Is jabr, ikhtiyar, va irade.
Okay, so there's no irade. It's jabr or ikhtiyar.
Yeah,
so
but
irade,
yeah.
Irade is something that's within ikhtiyar, or when you decide, then you make a decision and so forth. So they're not defined separately from each other. They're actually within their embedded within each other. So from this perspective, again, unless you have a what do you call it, a determination or a choice in order to do something, you are not going to be you will not be having let's say any sort of a determination or irade in a sense. So you have to make a decision first that this is what you want to do and so forth, and you do that. And once you do that, of course, then that by itself is gonna pan out the way we're gonna figure out how it's going to pan out. We still haven't determined as far as how this whole thing is gonna pan out yet. Right. So, but that's the way it is. So having said that, yeah, we did talk about, the free will versus, what do we call it?
Determinism.
Determinism or destiny in a sense.
Destiny, yeah.
Right? And I gave you guys a homework, and I'm not quite sure if you guys did your homework or not, but I'm going to ask. There was a homework that was assigned. So did anyone do the homework?
What was the homework? Refresh my memory. I may have done it. I just don't remember what it was called.
I have to keep refreshing your memory. So we got to figure this out. All right. So if you remember, there was a movie that I signed, which was
I didn't watch the movie.
Slumdog Millionaire, right?
I didn't watch the movie.
I asked you guys to watch the movie.
I didn't.
And I wonder if anyone watched it.
No, so sorry. I wish I had time to watch anything, even 30 minutes. I do homework for my children, not for myself. Just kidding.
I got you. All right. I understand. It's okay. Obviously. So I think I know Mahdi watched it.
Yes, I watched it.
Yes. So do you want to talk about the movie real quick?
So the movie, well, as you just mentioned last week, it starts off with the first question about this kid who comes from the slums of India and goes on Who Wants to Be a Millionaire and actually gets everything or wins it. And the first question is, how does he do it? Did he cheat? Did he get lucky? There was another answer, and then
did he know the answers?
Answer D was he knew the answer, and answer D was it was written. And so the movie is basically all about how the life for this kid is written from, I guess, before he was born, or I don't know.
No, let's not go there. Because then you're going to start opening up a can of worms as far as if it was written before it was born. But
his destiny, I guess it was more like his destiny was he falls in love with this girl from a very young age, where he meets her in, I guess, one of the orphanages that they were both at. And throughout the movie, they get separated multiple times, but he constantly looks for her. And he goes through a lot of hardship. And at the end, he ends up getting the money and the girl. So that's pretty much of the movie. And there was, I guess it talks about how, his destiny was written for him, and all the hardship that he went through was basically getting him ready for the next step or the next stage of his life.
So that's what I wanted to actually really get to, as far as the fact that because he's taken into custody, as they had made a prejudgment on him that he had somehow cheated on this game, and as he explains how he knew the answers, because every answer had a very direct effect on I mean, there was a life experience that he actually went through, and because of that life experience he knew the answers. So the part, I mean, this is why, I mean, I still urge you guys to see the movie, because our life experiences, as you may see in the movie, I mean, his life experiences are not really that easy at all. I mean, some of them are, as it's even portrayed, and they're not even that far from the truth, as far as, in some of the southeastern, countries back in the Middle East, just Middle Eastern countries altogether as well. There are difficulties. I mean, that certain groups of families or people go through, and so forth. And in this case, what I think the movie it was saying was that every hardship prepared him to get closer to his destiny, and he kept on going through the hardships regardless. He never lost sight of what his destiny was. He never lost his will to actually approach and get get he never let go of what he wanted to achieve. He always was behind it until he finally got it, of course. In there, as you said at the end, they make the choice that this was written, and that's true. And there were a couple of examples also, as far as when he went with his heart. Precisely, I don't want to spoil the movie for everyone, but there's a couple of places where he actually does, make a hard decision rather than just a decision of, let's just not do this. There were a couple of times that he was told not to do something, and he still does it. And as he does it, again, it's basically what his heart was telling him, and he trusted himself, and he trusted his heart, and he went with it. And so again, it's fairly entertaining, as I said before. I hope you guys get to watch it.
I just bought it from Amazon Prime, so I promise to watch it this weekend.
Well, I'm happy for you. So
you are very on top of it. You
Yeah.
got that book too, and you read it. Bravo.
Oh
Yeah.
my God, that's the most awesome book ever. Is it simple? Is short enough? I can read it when, and I don't need to worry about what I read or not read.
It's
It's a good
true.
book.
And I actually started reading it again
Yeah.
Awesome.
this week. Sorry. No.
That's awesome. All right, great.
It's right here.
Actually, the book doesn't show with the
With the background.
you have. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
we believe you, Rasul.
Yeah.
Okay. So I think
That's it.
So the last time, the areas that we went through, I think we read all the way up till line 650, somewhere around there. Am I correct?
That's correct. Beginning of 650. Yeah.
Yes. Wazir makes the disciples give up hope.
Yeah.
Of his ending his seclusion. So the
Yeah.
story we got to is the disciples are all looking at this guy to actually kind of let go of his seclusion. They keep coming to him, and they want him to let go of him being distant from them. And then as you mentioned, Rumi makes this whole, argument about free will versus the will of God. I mean, that's basically the argument that is, as far as what we think that we know we're doing, and what is it that, of course, how the will of God, makes its way into our lives. I'm just trying to make sure that I got the objective visitors. Yeah, there you go. And we also reviewed the fact that Rumi keeps on referring to us as musical instruments, and most of the references are to the musical instruments, which are, of the Eastern, background, and so all the instruments that we have in the Eastern music is there's two, as we talked about, and there were two elements associated with them. One was the fact that the instruments, in order to play well, they needed to be completely emptied out. And the other one was that the strings, which, we play, need to have a specific level of tension associated with them. And because of that, that's how we get the best, sound out of them. When they actually even adjust the piano, for instance, I think all of you guys have heard about this, like when a piano is moved, it's always, somebody has to come in and adjust it. And most of the time what they come in to adjust is the strings, the tension on the strings, as far as, how these strings play, because every single one of them associated with the tension that they have, they bring a separate song, or they bring a separate a type of a sound out of it. And he gives us to be an example of being the musical instrument. And also he talked about the fact that we are also like the pieces of the chess, as the fact that, we get checkmates by the grandmaster, and the grandmaster wizard is the person, who's playing us. So he keeps on trying to say that we are all at the God Almighty's mercy. He also, if you remember, talked about the fact that we are even just like the lions which are being painted on, the flags and all that. So he went through that as well for us. And in any sense, he kept on saying the fact that regardless of what happens, everything that is within us is all from you. You're the one who actually do anything and everything with us, irrespective of how things work out or how things happen. It's all within your, your kingdom, or your kingdom of ability. So we're not anything out of it. The other part that, we talked about was when Rumi then comes back and says that we are essentially as souls who are experiencing body, a limited and body experiences. We want to eventually get back to that where we were, as far as ensuring to dissolve ourselves into the will of God. Or if you remember the bait or the line from Farsi part, it was referring to Jabbari, the fact that we want to be dissolved in the Jabbari of God, or the will of God, in a sense. So we don't want to be. This is the best place for us, because Rumi wholeheartedly believes that God takes care of us in that level, or in where he is at. Any other lines or any other things that you may or I may have forgotten? Is basically, these are some of the things that we talked about. he also then also one other thing he said is that in every act in which you're satisfied, you give yourself the credit with such pride, but when your actions make you blush with shame, you say, he forced me, God's the one to blame. And that is the part that, you know, we need to be very careful about in our lives. I mean, we do this. I mean, if something happens, I always say I'm the one who did it, and then if something doesn't happen, then we always say, oh, you know, it wasn't, God didn't want this to happen, and so forth. We have to either or figure this out for ourselves. And the best way to do it is that whether it happens or it doesn't happen, we always come back and say, this was the will of God. So if it actually is something that we succeed in, we always come back and say, yes, we succeed in it because this was, you know, there was a will of God in it. And if we didn't, it's the same thing. So the next,
Mohsen, excuse me. Another example that comes to mind is when couples are pregnant. They keep praying to God to give him a healthy baby, give him a healthy mother after the birth and all that. When the baby is born, all they do is compliment the doctor. What a great doctor we have. They forget all about the word that they were praying to first.
That's true. That's very true. It's amazing that, you know, when it comes down to childbirth, you're absolutely right. I mean, one of the things that they first and foremost they thank is the doctor himself.
Yeah.
So yeah. But in any case, the fact of the matter is that these are some of the things that Rumi brings for us in order for us to figure out and make a decision. I mean, he really trying to put us in a position to make a decision for ourselves. It's a life decision. And that life decision is all about, how do I want to live my life? How do I want to, you know, portray everything that actually comes to me? So continuing on, so the vizier makes the disciples give up hope of him ending his seclusion. Then the vizier cried out from his locked cell, now listen. Well, now listen well to what I have to tell. Jesus has issued this command to me to separate from friends and family, to face the wall and sit here all alone, renouncing life, and that includes my own. From now on, I have no right to even speak, let alone teach the wisdom that you seek. I'm dead from now on, friends, so it's goodbye. I'm taking my belongings to the sky in order not to burn like wood in hell, enduring blame and hardship there as well. I'll sit with Jesus from now on up there in heaven's summit like a perfect pair. Remember, this guy was a grandmaster at conning people. So he had conned his way all the way through here, and he got to basically, you know, again, speak the right words for them. And now the next section is the wazir's appointment of each one of the group leaders as his successor. So remember that there were 12 groups, and all these 12 groups, they had 12 leaders. And he had first written, if you remember, 12 different types of set of instructions or books in a sense. And he had, put them in through and given it to each of these leaders. Now it's time for him to basically, mature and manifest what he was, what he had intended to do all along. So he summoned each group leader on his own to privately divulge what Christ has shown. He said to each one, Christ has chosen you as my soul, hair, and God's own spokesman too. So basically, he's bringing each of them one by one alone, and he's making them believe that they are the other folks who are going to be leading this group at the end. The other leaders are your deputies. You should consider them your own trainees. If one of them should grumble or protest, kill him or put him under house arrest. But don't disclose this while I'm still the head. Don't seek my role until I'm finally dead. Until that time, act like you haven't heard. Don't make a claim, nor breathe a single word. Inside this scroll is Jesus' decree. Recite it then to his community. To each of them he said, this is your role. There is no one else who can assume control. He treated each one like a special king and promised each of them the same old thing. To each he gave a separate scroll, its sign, with different rules, as if God changed his mind. Remember that we went through all of them this was about 2-3 weeks ago, that he basically, if you look at everything all together, they made sense. But if you actually took them one by one and made them gave them each its own boundaries, then it wouldn't make sense. They were all in conflict of each other. And if you remember also from the very beginning, his role or his mission was to bring conflict into this group and get them to kill each other.
Yeah.
So he treated each one like a special king and promised each of them the same old thing. To each he gave a separate scroll he'd signed with different rules of God, as if God had changed his mind. Discrepancies in them were easily read, as different as the letters A to Z. Each contradicted what the rest declared. Already news about this ploy I've shared. So basically we've talked about, he's saying that, we talked about what each of them were. Now, in order to basically manifest what he wanted, here's what he does. He kills himself. The vizier's suicide in seclusion. So he stayed apart a further 40 days, then killed himself to flee his own veiled ways. When people heard the news, they mourned and screamed. For some, the end of time had come, it seemed. Towards his grave, they came in disbelief and pulled their hair and ripped their cloth in grief. Who knows how many came in those first weeks, including Arab, Turks, and Kurds and Greeks. They kissed his grave's soil, thinking it was pure. Redemptive suffering they sought as their cure. For 1 whole month, the crowds wept tears of blood, creating around his grave a massive flood. I think it's fairly explanatory as far as the fact that, these people, they looked at him as a leader, and now the leader was gone, and therefore to them, they all grieved that. And here's where it is. So the followers of Jesus asked their leaders, which one of you is his successor? Well, after a month had passed in bitter grief, the people asked, who now can serve as chief? Which one do we consider up to it, to swear allegiance to him and submit? We have roasted, but the sun has left no trace. Don't we now need a torch to take its place? When union with the Lord has left our sight, we need to be reminded of his might. Like when the fragrant rose's life is spent, rosewater lets us still breathe in its scent. God won't reveal himself although he lives. So prophets serve as representatives. So as you can tell, he kind of paused the story now, and he's kind of going into another subject, another mystical subject, and that is what he believes we should do as people. In order, he's like, if you're seeking something, you need to understand that what you seek, it's going to basically, I mean, there's going to be there's going to be signs that would lead you to what you're seeking. And in here, this is what he's talking about. Basically, we've got to figure out, if we can't see the rose, finding out where the rose water is, or where the smell of the rose water is something that's important. Now, he's kind of starting to bring in the sense of smell into play here. And that is something that perhaps right now, in our Farsi class, we're discussing. And we discussed it last night as well. I wonder if Mr. Mohsen is able to give us any insights into this smell, as far as what do we mean when we say that we have to have a good sense of smell? Do you remember?
You're on mute.
He's on mute, yeah.
I don't remember exactly what we said, but I do remember that we talked about where we came from. So obviously the good smell is a familiar smell, that when we came from Adam, that kind of smell was there. That's why, even a baby likes a good smell rather than bad smell, even though he doesn't have in this life experience of what is did. I don't remember.
So okay, so what you're saying is that all right, you're right, we did talk about that as well, that so if you remember, there was the notion of our heart, and our heart is is where our flowers are supposed to bloom. And Rumi says that in order for flowers to bloom within our heart, we need to make sure that the bed of where we are trying to harvest these flowers is free of any sort of anything that is not pure, or anything that is growing thorns, in a sense. So if you have somewhere that you've got cactus perhaps growing, which has a lot of thorns, having a rose, flower next to it, there's going to be it's going to be a difficult environment for the rose. So Rumi is making this analogy as to how we prepare our hearts for what needs to grow in there to actually basically start the healing of our souls. What do I mean by that? When our hearts is the bed rest and the growing area for thorns, thorns constantly give us pains. So anything basically that happens to us in life, because we have a bed, our bed rest of our heart completely filled with these thorns, we're constantly in pain. What we need to figure out is what these thorns are and take them out, so that we can enable, if we're going to use the analogy of a little land, or little piece of soil, that we have to get ready in order to have flowers planted in it, you need to first be able to weed out what's not supposed to be in there. This weeding out is what we take pride of when we are actually reading Rumi Masnavi. This is what we're doing. We're weeding out what's not supposed to be in our hearts. And this is a sign for us as well that anything that gives us any sort of pain, what gives us pain, the reason that it gives us pain is that within ourselves, we have a thorn that's identifying with what is giving us the pain. Am I making sense?
Yes, actually, on a more simplistic form, as a gardener, if you have a garden that you go and pull the weeds.
What happened? We lost you, Rasul. Okay.
Things to grow instead of the weeds.
Okay, so we lost you for a majority of part of what you said. So if you don't mind repeating that, that would be great.
Okay, yeah, so what I was saying that even at the more simplistic level as a gardener, when you go work in your garden and pull the weeds and make it beautiful, you feel good about it at the end of the day at that level. And also you provide room for the beautiful flowers and other worthwhile things to grow where the weeds were taking place and producing nothing of value. So that's the same metaphor.
That's very true. And again, I want to just emphasize on the fact that you know, what happens to us is, this is something that, you know, I probably personally did not believe in at some time in my life, and now I am a firm believer in it. The fact of the matter is that what happens in our life that gives us pain is because we have the bed rest of pain within us. So that thorn or that element of pain is fully, you know, grown and in there. So if you remember about 4 or 5, actually when we were discussing the story of the slave girl and you know, the goldsmith, there was an area that again Rumi referred to thorns, and what he said was that if you see a thorn in your foot, you try to take a needle and you try to search for it and eventually find it and grab it and pull it out. And he's like, that is how difficult it is when you actually have something that you can actually see. But if you have a thorn in your heart, that is much more difficult to actually get and bring it out. And he's now again kind of trying to give us the same type of analogy as his, because he wants us to start preparing, or at least getting ready to get these thorns and weeds out of our hearts so that the flowers can get there. And the only reason that you know that flowers are blooming is when you know that you can smell them. That's the only way you know. You have to have the smell of the flowers within you. You have to feel it, or else it's not gonna do us any good.
We're talking about basically the instinct, that innate instinct.
How do you, what context are you using instinct for?
Like the smell, to be able to smell. To
Okay.
know. That's what I'm asking. I don't know if I'm right. So please correct me if I'm not.
He literally refers to smell as the scent, as a scent. What another thing that he also tells us is that why is it that everybody likes a good scent? Why is that, you know, a good scent is universally recognized?
Okay.
And he says the reason that is because our souls have been so in touch with them, with their origin, and that's how the origin was. So this reminds us of what we wear or where we wear, and that's why the scent is so important.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank
So
you.
in this case, this is also what he's referring to. Now, let's read this through, and again, you know, this will be more and more. It will show itself a little bit better. So when union with the Lord has left our sight, we need to be reminded of his might. So when we are not with God, we need to be reminded somehow, like when the fragrant rose's life is spent, rose water lets us still breathe its scent. So again, he's talking about the fact that, you know, we need reminders. We just need reminders so that we won't forget where did we come from. God won't reveal himself although he's alive. He lives. God won't reveal himself although he lives. So prophets serve as representatives. Now he's trying to also give us a better understanding as why prophets are within our, you know, have come through in our lives. They are not apart from that they represent. That's incorrect. It's not that I first meant. So now he's trying to tell us that what prophets have done or have said and what God basically, you know, has said, they are not two different things. They are the same. They seem distinct if to their form you tied. Discerning eyes can tell they are unified. Now, if we look at them as what we see through our eyes, which that's basically our lives today, the way we look at prophets is this is Jesus, this is Moses, this is a church, this is a, you know, a synagogue, and this is a mosque. So different. This guy doesn't do this, and this guy doesn't do that, and this guy doesn't do that, and therefore it's all set. And he's trying to tell us that they're not different. They were not different to begin with. We are the ones who have brought these differences in them. They seem distinct if to their form you tied. Discerning eyes can tell they are unified.
Discerning.
Oh, sorry. Thank you. Discerning. You're seeing double. You're seeing double if their forms your aim. Observe their light. You will see that it's the same. Now, again, if you see that, you know, of course, you know, in accordance to the book that they bring and the followers, that's how we see double. And right now, I'm going to say majority of the world is seeing double.
Mm-hmm.
This is why we have what we have. So who can discern his own eyes share of light when it's this light which gives each man his sight? If you light up 10 lamps when there's a storm, each differs from the other in its form, but no one still can separate their lights, which makes the space around you clear and bright. Now, again, another analogy. Yeah, you put 10 lamps together, you can never tell which lamp is giving what light. Light is light. Light is the same, and you see because of that. So therefore, these are not different. You cannot separate these stuff. You now see countless apples in the cart, but once they are crushed, you can't tell them apart. Again, the same thing. Yeah, when you know, you've got a bunch of apples, if they are crushed into and you get apple juice out of them, you can't tell which is coming from which. The spirit's realm has no plurality, division, individuality. The union of the lovers waits for you. Hold on. Don't let its form obstruct your view. Okay, so now here's another thing that I want you guys to, fully contemplate towards. When you're looking at, in this case, when he's talking about spirit's realm, he's talking about what we are doing to even his poetry. We're trying to figure out what the poetry means. And he's like, in meaning behind the faces, in meaning behind the surface, there is no plurality in the form of what he's saying, because all of them are one. So plurality is where you bring differences. And he's saying that there are no differences in there. There's no division. There's no individuality. This union of lovers waits for you. Now, what he says is that you need to start looking into yourself as to how best I can actually join them. And once you join them, you join this union. And the way we join this union is by relinquishing and letting go of ourself, and completely kind of, get diluted into this union. This union of lovers waits for you. Hold on. Don't let its form obstruct your view. And the reason he says that is because we look at what the form is, and that form totally obstructs us from moving forward, because the form may not be something that we are, okay with, or we're in tune with. Melt stubborn form through hardship and be bold, and you'll find unity beneath like gold. So basically, this is like a very direct advice, I would say, that we need to melt, our stubbornness and hardship. It's like, let it go and be bold about it. The reason we need to be bold is because, it's a pretty bold move, and it needs pretty bold actions. We have to do the bold moves. And these bold moves are difficult. But if you look at how he arrived at his, at his enlightenment, and how he started looking at the world the way he has portrayed it for us, he had to do a bold move. He had to go through a lot of hardship. So, melt stubborn form through hardship and be bold, and you'll find unity beneath like gold. If you don't melt it, then his kindness will. Now, another thing that he's trying to tell us is the fact that you need to want and wish the fact that you want this form that you actually is obstructing your view to be melted and to go away. So it's like, you need to also ask for it. And if you ask for it, if you don't do it yourself, God from his kindness is going to assist you on that. The master of our hearts supports us still. So basically saying that he would still do this because, he is also in love with us as we love him. He shows his face inside your happy heart and soothes the Sufi clock that's torn apart and sews. So a Sufi clock is cloak, I think that's what it is. So it's basically what Sufis used to always wear, and it's something that's very old and very, perhaps, it's been torn apart in different places, and it's like he's the one who's going to start sewing this back together and make it look nice. And basically, and he would show his face inside your happy heart. And happy heart only comes when we have actually kind of, started plucking the thorns out of it and create that, bed rest for the flowers to start growing in it.
Mohsen,
Yes.
let's talk about this reference to Sophie's cloak, that you called it. I think that requires a very deep understanding and conversation about just that one line.
Okay.
Because Sufis, from what I know or what I read and remember, they essentially forego the wearing of the beautiful gold, the nice outfit, and they always look like that is hand down from 10 generations that they were something like that. And that's all intentional on their part. From what I read, that they always want to remember that they're really nothing themselves. They don't want to feel that they're above or they're beyond certain measures by wearing beautiful dresses, beautiful outfits. So it's intentional on their part to wear run down, torn outfits to show that they don't mean that the earthly possessions doesn't mean much to them.
True.
And another view is that they eventually get to a level when they wear a torn outfit like that, they actually see it as beautiful and actually as very appealing. So it blends in for them when they get to a certain divinity.
Okay.
I think that's what he's trying to say in here, these two different dimensions.
So there is a little bit of a difference here. And that is, so first of all, this is the part that he's nice to Sufis.
Yeah.
Actually. Rumi is going to be pretty bold and offensive to them fairly soon.
But right here is nice.
No. As a matter of fact, there's only a couple of times that, he believes that whoever calls himself a Sufi is not a Sufi.
Oh.
He doesn't like them. He doesn't like the fact that these guys act like panhandlers. He doesn't like it that these guys go into seclusions. He has a line of poetry that says, if you want to actually, as a matter of fact, he says this, which it makes total sense. As a matter of fact, it makes so much sense for the society that we have in Iran right now. He says, you're not doing yourself any favor when you say, I'm going to be in seclusion, so therefore I will not get so excited when I see women. So I'm going to completely suppress myself from seeing women. Yeah. It's like the true Sufi is the one who actually is in the society and lives his life, but does not get associated, or it does not get bogged down with all the wishes of your ego and your nafs.
Yeah, he has complete self-control.
So yeah, he actually goes after these guys. He's not nice to them at all. So, and by the way, another thing that I want to make sure that we also we know this. We have to know this about Rumi. Rumi is not against anyone having wealth. He's not against anyone to, have, he actually talks about business a lot. That, hey, you do business, you do this, you do that. He wants you to live your life. The area that he is emphasizing the most on is that don't be attached to any of these things.
Exactly.
Our attachments are where they bring the most problems for us. We are attached to what we have. So this attachment is the thing that bogs us down.
Yes.
And therefore, this is the area that I think he surely, looks at. In this case, he's looking at the fact that God is going to sew and make the Sufi's cloth or Sufi's dress look nice. There is a poem in his other book, Ghazaliyat Shams, which he says he refers to God as the tailor of the universe. The tailor of the universe. He's like, the tailor of the universe did never gave you any shirt to wear that he did not eventually make a full-on, I guess, suit out of it. So he gives you a shirt first, and then he eventually completes you with a suit. This is what he's referring to in here. I'm glad you actually brought this up, because what he's saying is that you have to ask. Just remember, right before this, he's saying that you've got to ask and you have to want the fact that he is there. You want to become one with his people. And he wants you to melt yourself through so that you would become one, or ask for it. And he listens and he will do it eventually. So
Mohsen, I wanted to interrupt you.
Sure.
If you're done with that thought. Are you done? I guess.
Yes, go ahead.
Sorry. So it's interesting that you guys brought that up, because I know from years ago, I live in Orange County, which is very interesting. I grew up in LA, that's more down to earth, I would say, but here where we live is not very, it's a very flashy area. And the Iranian community, it's interesting. So when I first moved here, I struggled with this. And so I remember I read a quote, I randomly got in an email, like spiritual quote of the day, and it's always stuck to me, God, for over a decade. And it said, the more space you have in your life for the divine and the spiritual, the less you have for material. And the more space you have in your heart for material things, the less you have for the spiritual. So that always really stuck with me. But I've always had a conundrum, as I think a lot of us, I think, that try to be successful, etc., then, you do like a certain level of comfort. And so you sometimes feel guilt if you like material things. And then it's a balance. And I heard something recently that really struck me. Probably someone who also studies Rumi told me this, and she's studied him, God, for I think over 30 years. And she said, Maury, the best quote I heard from someone who was older than her, who taught her this, was that don't let material things distract you from the spiritual. And I thought that was very helpful, because sometimes you do think of that Darvish Sufi way, and maybe do they have it right? They can say no to all this material things and be on this spiritual path so much better. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But I think hearing it from that lady who's very very well versed and very well read, I thought she's like, like you said, Rumi believed in being comfortable and things, but it's that those things shouldn't distract you, not that you should bar yourself from.
So let me the very first quote that you said, let me just add something to that. So this is where you are supposed to expand your heart and soul.
Mm-hmm.
You have, perhaps, I'm sure you've referred to a lot of people in your life as somebody who is big-hearted.
Right.
And the person that's big-hearted, it's basically what we really are saying is that they can absorb everything and they can still be content. Mm-hmm. This is how you, again, when it comes down to, because if you keep your heart as limited space as it is, or as it was, or whatever it is right now, then what that means is that there is a place for, like you said, these material possessions or earthly connections, and then there is some space for divine connection. Mm-hmm. But then as you open up and you create more space and you keep creating space, that is where you can actually then invite more and more of the divine. And guess what? The drawback to that is actually when you create more space, the material stuff are going to keep on coming. because that's how the universe works. This is how this universe works. It just keeps on coming.
It's like you fertilize it, and it keeps growing.
It does. It literally does. So therefore, we need to expand ourselves. This is what we mean by expanding our soul. The more you expand yourself, the more it just keeps on coming to you. And I have seen examples of it, you know, unfortunately on both sides, whereas, you know, people who have just completely been non-attached to their belongings or possessions. And it's amazing how God just has been giving to them versus the ones who are completely attached with you. You can't even get close to them because their aura is so difficult. It just gets you so, you know, I mean, it really puts you under a lot of, how should I say it? It's difficult to even comprehend it.
You know, that also, excuse me, go ahead.
Oh, no, go ahead. Go ahead.
That also has a flip side to it too, that true that people that are attached and possessed by material things and they get to a certain level, you can't really penetrate their soul. But on the other hand, there are people that really lose everything and they still not very upset because they know they're going to make it back. But there's some people, when they lose it, they're gone. They're lost.
Yeah, that's true. It just is the way it is. Yeah, you're right.
Yeah.
You're absolutely correct.
Yeah.
So I'm glad you guys brought up the points because this is exactly where it's at. It's I mean, that's how, where he's bringing this, and this is why he's referring to this. Now let's go to the other lines because these next 4 lines are also pretty important. So it says, like one expansive whole was our past state. Beyond one could not differentiate. Now, this is where I'm not quite sure if this translation is doing justice to the original text, because what he is saying is that originally we were all big and we were all one. We were all from one place. Mm-hmm. And he refers to the fact that we didn't have, literally the words are bisaro bipa bodim. So that means that we didn't have any identity and we didn't have these tools that would make us so dynamic. We were just part of one thing. Okay. And so he's referring to the origins in here. So Mombaset, so in this case, it says, like one expansive whole was our past state, beyond one could not differentiate. The same throughout in form, just like the sun, like water, clear and still as if it's one. So it's like we were one, just like how we have only one sun. And also in this case, the example of the water that he's bringing in, the word that he's using is knot. You know, when you actually tie knots, it's like we didn't have any knots on us. We were just like water. And guess what? This is how, as we go through life experiences, our ego is, you know, creating all these knots for us, one after another, just for different reasons, because of our experiences. So originally, this is how we were. We were, and in this translation, it says clear and still as if it was one. And I'm going to say we were without any knots. Now, when it took form, and this is us, we took form. This is because we have this body. When it took form, that pure light multiplied like shadows of the battlements outside. Of course, because we now all of a sudden, you know, we are different. I mean, things are just different. And we have identities, and these identities show up in different forms and different lights. Now, this is the part that, again, I'm not quite sure if this translation is good, but I'm going to highlight this anyways. It says, demolish all of them, my faithful troop. Erase the differences among this group. So as long as we live with the differences that are within us, we're going to experience pain. We're going to experience, limitations. We're going to experience all sorts of, things which are preventing us from becoming that one with our original, with our origin and our original creator. Does this make sense?
Maybe.
It does, but it completely contradicts the spirit of what he said earlier. Like earlier, especially like you were reminding us about when he's talking about how we all come from one big entity, or even here, like we're considered from the same cloth, right? Like as a whole, like it's enriching. There's vibrant. There's each piece is really important, even of the 12 different Christian groups, right? Like they all have a path to the truth. If they could just respect each other. But here it's actually saying that the differences among us are evil, essentially. Which is I feel like
No. It is saying that when we look at the differences as what we were, because the differences, we look at them as part of our identity. And he's saying that you have to start breaking down these differences. Am I making sense? That was a good point. I just want to make sure that.
Yeah, so it's actually, it's the differences when we see each other as different. That's the actual barrier, not necessarily the path to the divine.
That's correct. Because we are all coming from the same place. So we're all one at one point. But these differences, the problem is that, again, he wants us to actually see beyond what forms us. And you are very correct. At the moment in our life, this is an extremely difficult task. We are Democrats and Republicans and Muslims and Jews and Christians and Americans and Iranians and Latinos and Indians. And this is what we are. We have categorized, we have category after category of us. We are totally defined by these stuff, unfortunately. And that's not cool. So again, you're right. It seems such an impossible thing to do. But it goes back into, again, how this is why he's using the words demolish. It needs some demolition. And it's the demolition of thoughts that we need to do. And I'm going to be the first to admit, I've got a hard time myself. I do. And I talk about this stuff. No, I'm serious. There's sometimes that life gets really difficult. And then when it gets difficult, then I forget about the fact that I got to see beyond the face or the form. So, nobody said this was easy. Remember at the very beginning, I think you perhaps joined a little after, but he kept on telling us this is a bloody path.
He did.
So it is bloody. We're gonna get bloody, but it's something that the challenges in our lives. I think eventually this is something that, at least personally, I can talk to you through it. Is that for me, it's been more helpful than hurtful. So. And it's a daily challenge, not even, something that, just gets easier or anything like that. No, it doesn't. So it's a path. So go ahead.
Does he come on the other side of that at all? In other, there's always this tension between, or for me, I always notice this tension sort of between exclusivity and the universality of religion, let's say. And so does really like so on this at this point he's definitely coming on the side of the universality of or the grand unity of religion and beliefs and this kind of stuff. Does he come on the other side at all, or is he always on this side?
So what is the other side? Sorry, I mean,
The other side is like the differences, like the actual differences.
uh,
Like, is there something to be said that would
he says we are the ones who made the differences, and the reason we make the differences, again, according to him, is because we are driven by our mind and our nafs, or our ego. So in order for us to comprehend things, we have to have, as a matter of fact, let's go to a different, we talked about this also at the very beginning. He said that this world is full of differences, is the world of opposites, right? So we are living in the world of differences, but he says that the origin of why the differences were created was that as we recognize these differences, and we work through them, we see the image of God in them, and God portrayed us in his own image, but he created us in these differences so that we could see him, because he doesn't have an opposite. So he says that these are all things for us to better see him. But unfortunately, I mean, I hate, and I know, I forgive me, but I keep saying this, that we're going to get there, and we will get there. This is going to happen. He's going to utilize an example of Cain. Okay. He says that you guys have gotten canes in your hand when you come to this world. And just like a blind man has a cane. And what he does is, he keeps tapping. And these tap-ins tells him where the path is. And he's like, you're given a cane at the beginning so that you could actually see the way. But at one point, you will see it. And that's where you need to actually get rid of the cane and put it away. But you don't, because you take the cane and start beating each other with it. I mean, literally, this is the poem. And I have to search for it and tell you guys, because it's so true. We beat each other with the canes. And that's not cool. So there is the opposites, that the opposite of this that he looks at is basically how should I say it? It's the opposite of this that he looks at is basically how the whole purpose of creation. You know what? I tell you what. Give me 2 minutes, and if you guys want to grab a drink or whatever, and I'm gonna find this poem for you. No, you guys have to see this. And again, we're gonna get to it, but I want you guys to read this. So if anybody wants to get a drink or anything, 2 minutes, and I'll find it. We have to read this. There's just no way I'm gonna let this one go.
I will take that 2 minutes.
Yeah.
didn't say that.
Okay, I think I found it. I'll wait until Rasul gets here.
I'm here.
Okay.
Is it Daguri?
So let me also make sure. So he's talking about the fact that a blind man, needs a stick to walk around. A blind man is us. We need a stick, and the stick is right here, the mind. The mind tells us how to navigate or how to go around. While the blind man needs a stick to walk around to stop them tumbling over on the ground. Okay, to stop them tumbling over on the ground. Fine. So then he says, that horseman through whom armies won their fight, who is this man? The one who has true sight. So he's talking about the fact that there were people who were able to help people win their fight. And this fight that he's talking about is a fight that we think we are in it in our lives. And it's like there are horsemen who can have, because they have better sights, they can actually win this fight. Though with a stick, the blind can walk with ease. So he's like, I'm sorry. Though with a stick, the blind man can walk with ease, seeing through help received from visionaries. So it's like, although the blind man starts coming and saying that, oh yeah, I can see, I can actually walk better. I may, I can keep up. It's like the only reason they can see this is because they've got a visionary around them, and that visionary is still guiding them through. Okay. If there were no kings of the mystic kind, as stiff as corpses, you would see the blind. So it's like, if there were not these visionaries, and these visionaries that he's now talking about is people like himself. He is a visionary that he's actually showing us how and how to navigate and how to see things through, or else we would be completely blind. And so he's talking about the prophets and folks like himself. So sowing and reaping blind man cannot do. Okay, that's true. Nor trade, nor building as it's plain to you. So he's like, these guys are not able to do anything, realistically speaking, if they didn't have anyone to guide them through. If he had not shown mercy to your heart, your staff of reason would have split apart. So now he's saying, what is this staff? Proofs and analogies. So he's now trying to tell us that we needed these stuff so that we could actually see, that we can do our lives. Who gave it? The most glorious one who sees. He's the one who gave us proofs and analogies, right? The staffs become a weapon for your hate. I'm sorry, in this case, when he's talking about staff, he's talking about, again, prophets and guided men like himself. He's like, now the staffs have become a weapon for your hate. So now all of a sudden you don't like him, or you don't like something that they say, or you see differently because of something of a form. So break it into bits, you blind ingrate. So now it's like, you need to now break your cane because your cane is now misleading you. You needed it to lead you. Now you've got to break it now. He gave this staff that you might benefit. In anger, has he struck you once with it? He's talking about how God gave you this staff or these helpers so that you would benefit from it. He never tried to actually, beat you with it or anything. Blind people, what's kept you preoccupied? Look for an intermediary, a guide. He's telling us, we are the blind people. Okay, so yeah, it's line 2150. And we are at line 600. So no, but I think you guys got the point, right? As far as how he sees it. Did I lose anyone? We're good. Okay. So we're on page 46. Sorry. I have to get back here again. So Mathine, did I answer the question?
Yeah.
Okay. So now he's back here again. I think, all right, so this is where we were. So these points are finer than a saber's tip. Scape if you haven't. I'm sorry. Scape if you have no shield yet in your grip. So it's like you have to also understand that these points that he's given us, these are extremely sharp. What he means by it is that we've got to learn how to use these things. And some of us, again, we are not, let's put it this way. I'm not saying that we are not equipped or we don't know anything. It's just that just thoughts like this, that all of a sudden we're thinking, okay, so wait a second. So he's telling me that how do I expand myself so that I can actually, be so more inclusive? How do I do that? How do I make sure that I am, I take all these thorns and, weeds out of my heart so that my heart can actually become the bedrest of roses? How do I do that? How did I actually start growing thorns in my heart? When did that start? And this is where, like, when you go to psychologists, they tell you that you have to unwire yourself. Now, the psychology term is unwiring. You unwire yourself. And this is what, again, Rumi is telling us. You've got to unwire yourself and then rewire yourself back in. So without a shield, don't try to hold your own. In murdered this cruel blade, no shame has shown. So it's like, if you don't have the right shield, don't do it yourself. This is why you guys are referring to Rumi and trying to figure out how is he guiding you through this. I put my own sword in its sheath again, so my intentions aren't misread by men. Now, he feels, we're going to keep hearing this from him. You remember, he's saying these poems in a gathering, and in this gathering, what's happening is, people are, of course, they get excited about what he says and so forth, and sometimes he feels like the audience is not ready for any more. Therefore, he says that I've got to stop it right here. Now, let's complete this story rapidly about those godly Christians' loyalty. After the teacher died, they tried to find someone to fill the role he had left behind. Okay, so we're getting back to the story again. So the struggle between the leader over successorship. One of the leaders stepped up, tall and proud, before the faithful and expectant crowd. He said, I'm the successor of that sage to represent Lord Jesus in his age, in this age. So therefore, remember the whole thing was, you guys, they had to wait until he died, and now they had to go and say that, yeah, this is it. It's us. I'm the God. I'm the dude, basically.
No, not us. Each one of them was supposed to say, "This me."
Him, yeah, him and his group, basically, yeah. So there were 12 of them, yeah. This scroll is evidence for all to see that this inheritance belongs to me. But from the crowd, another leader came. His claim to be successor just the same. He held a scroll under his right arm. Enraged, they cursed and wished each other harm. There you go. Today, this is happening. This happened, unfortunately, in the Middle East with what happened with the Yazidis and how they got massacred, and others, groups of Muslims and all that. This was not a distance ago. This happens again, as also in India. I know there are, killings of, Hindus and Muslims and all that. This is
Taliban in Afghanistan.
In Afghanistan, in Myanmar, and those places. It is still happening. And believe it or not, it's just this, really. He held a scroll too under his right arm. Enraged, they cursed and wished each other harm. In turn, the other leaders made their way, drawing their gleaming swords to join the fray. Each held a scroll and saber in the mouth, like drunken elephants that swing and fall. Thousands of Christian bodies soon lay dead, and mounds were formed by gathering each one's head. Yeah, and remember the original wish that, the vizier wanted to fulfill. He didn't want the king to kill these guys. He wanted them to kill each other. And that's exactly what happened. And why did it happen? Because they failed to see. They couldn't see. They could not see beyond the form. And they fought for it. So just like a flood, their blood spilled all around. Enormous clouds of dust rose from ground. Dissension's seed, which that vizier had sown, produced such tragedies that chilled the bone. Their walnut bodies soon were split and cracked. Only the purest kernels stayed intact. This reference to walnut by Rumi is actually not translated properly here. So Rumi believes that when you're actually looking at the walnut, so the walnut looks like, how a walnut looks like a brain. And he says that, so in order for you to fully get the true essence of a walnut, you have to pass the surface. The surface is something that is completely unusable, and it's so dry that it would crack. But the walnut inside, it was, completely pure, and it's delicious, and that's what we eat. So he's referring to us when when people are looking at each other from a surface perspective. That's why he's using the walnuts. That's why he's saying that, their surface just cracks. The surface is something that's there to completely be destroyed. Eventually it will destroy itself. Our bodies, our face, our skin, our bodies will eventually destruct. We're gonna, get, our joints are gonna be having difficulty, and our eyesight is gonna go bad, and eventually, our hair is gonna go white, or it's going to fall off, or something like that. It will happen. Everything like that is going to happen. So this is what he is trying to say. Their walnut bodies soon split and cracked. Only purest kernels stayed intact. And that's the ones that actually, so in this case, he's talking about people who were able to pass beyond the form and only knew what the essence was. Those are the ones who actually stayed intact. That's what the body nature seems to fit. Now, he's talking about death, and death is something that we visually see it as it actually happens to our bodies. As pomegranates must be crushed and split. So he's now referring to death. You guys have seen pomegranates, right? And I'm sure all of you guys have had some delicious ones, which are, you know, once they actually are fully grown and they are just, you know, looking really nice, if you just, you know, give it a little bit of push, it just cracks. And that's where you actually get to see the, you know, inside the seeds and everything. And the seeds are just beautifully gorgeous. And then, you know, all that. So he's saying that the reason death is there is because it needs to crack this body so that the soul, which in essence, that spirit which has elevated into a soul, is now, you know, it starts showing itself. So he's now trying to give a different terminology or a different, now my mind is going blank, symbolism for our soul as pomegranate seeds. The sweet ones turn to syrup, pure and good. The rotten just makes sounds like a lump of wood. And now he's talking about different pomegranates. The ones that are sweet, the ones that have completely elevated and they are, you know, elevated into a soul, and the ones that, no, they have rotten and they have completely kept themselves into their own shells and have been living with the pains and the thorns. Those with pure spirits finally see his face, while rotten ones will only find disgrace. Now, remember, everything that Rumi is looking at is for him to become one with his beloved. Now, he's saying that those who are the ones which are pure and, you know, they're sweet and they you know, they have the right syrup, they're the ones who finally will get to become one with the beloved, while the rotten ones will only find disgrace. So don't worship form, but look for loftier things. So now he's trying to tell us something, that if you're looking at anything, try to not to worship the form, or try not to look at the form. Try to look at something that's beyond that. Because the spirit gives the body wings. So in order for us to elevate, or in order for us to actually go higher, it's the spirit that actually gives us our wings. Does this make sense? Okay. Have you guys seen the movie It's a Wonderful Life on
Oh, yeah.
Yes, you have. You guys know at the very end of the movie, that angel, that dude who wanted to get his wings. I mean, it was a fairy, right? And the fairy wanted to get his wings. And I mean, that movie is such a wonderful movie. I love it, and I watch it. I own it. I have watched it so many times. I don't know how many times I've seen it. The conversation that happens between, you know, Joseph and God is amazing at the very beginning. And the way they portray that whole story about how this guy, his life, oh my God, it's the same thing. His life was meant to be that way. He needed to be there in order to help his brother. He needed to be there to save the town. He needed to be there to make sure that people had a roof on their head. And by the way, it's a kind of a struggle between banks and, you know, credit unions and all that stuff too. So it's a banking system struggle as well. That tells you that in 1930s there was also a struggle like today. This has never gone away. So it's a story. It's a lesson for us. This is all a game. We have to detach from all of these things. We just have to. So I know that, you know, it's Christmas that they showed, right? Or Thanksgiving. It's Christmas. Yeah. Watch it before Christmas. I love it. I love the movie. At the very end, finally, that dude who comes and Clarence, that's the guy's name, Clarence. Clarence finally gets his wings. Why? Because he had to help another soul. Yeah. I have no idea how. The director is I think I forgot his name. He's the one who also did Mr. Smith Goes to Washington and all that. I don't know how he wrote this story, but it's beautiful. And the story is full of mystical formations. I mean, mystical words and meanings. So don't worship the form, but look for loftier things, because spirit gives the body its wings. Keep company with those who are spiritual, to gain his grace and be more liberal.
Frank Capra was the director.
Frank Capra, yeah, there you go. Thank you. I love that guy. I mean, I think the guy was a genius for that time, 1930s, and the movie that he made. I mean, it's beautiful inside and out.
That's why it's lasted so long, and still people watch it.
Yeah, but seriously, I mean, think about it. There is a reason that I don't know if people know this or not, but again, I mean, I love Christmas. And the reason I love Christmas is because I like the story behind it. Not the story that, you know, people like to believe in everything, but the symbolism that are for Christmas. They're all symbolism of birth and renewal and everything. And it's the same, and coincidentally, it's the same. There's only like 3 days difference between, you know, in Iranian tradition, we celebrate the night of Yalda, which is the longest night of the world, December 21st. And the symbolism to that is also the fact that finally light prevails. So the darkness is going to start losing from the next day. So Christmas comes right after that. And Christmas is also a story of birth. So all these things, again, this life that we have is full of these symbolisms. And these symbolisms gives us, personally, I get energy out of it. So another thing that he tells us is the fact that keep company with those who are spiritual to gain his grace. So it's important for us to be careful who we hang with. People who we hang out with, they have to be on the same wavelengths with you. If they are not, you don't have to be in the same room with them. You don't have to hang out. You just don't. Your heart, your soul is too precious. So the fact of the matter is that we've got to figure out, how do we, you know, I mean, there is a poem that eventually we're going to actually read, which Rumi in Divan Shams, he tells us that we have got to hang out with people who are on the same wavelength as our heart. If we're not hanging out with the same people who are in the same wavelength as our heart, we're going to destroy ourselves. Because again, in his words, there are, you know, he uses the word Roseanne, which is like a very, very small hole. And he's like, these small holes transmit the energy of one heart versus another. It just does. So
That's why these classes are these Zoom classes in the midst of Corona are actually such a blessing, because you get to hang out with like-minded people that it's so hard to get to in our busy, normal pre-pandemic lives.
it is. You're so correct. Because one of the things that happens to us is that we get. I mean, just imagine a whole day. And I'm sorry, I don't want to pick on you, Maury, because I know you're an attorney. Attorneys work. You're constantly. I mean, you have to use your brain. You are making reasons. You are counter arguing, and it's complete conversation of the mind. It is completely conversation of the mind. I'm not saying that you don't do this, but it's really difficult for an attorney to come back and say, let's just, come from love and compromise.
I think I told you guys in this class, that's how I negotiated something before Christmas.
You did.
Yeah,
No,
and
you
it worked.
didn't. No, you didn't.
I didn't tell you guys
No, you did not.
that I sat in, but I did. I really tried it. It was the first time in my career, and it worked with a
That's
bunch
good.
of older men.
Hooray.
Piece of litigation for two. I think I mentioned it. Did I not?
No, you did not. But
2
I'm glad
years.
you did.
But it's true. It's so hard. I've been an attorney for so many years. I've negotiated so many deals. I've laughed when all I see is people arguing and mind, but they forget about like, what's the real goal of the client, But I did that this Christmas. We had litigation for like.
I mean, imagine this literally in that type of conversation. I mean, one wants, those divorce attorneys. They're the worst, right? I mean, somebody wants the car, and the other one wants the TV. I mean, two things that are eventually going to completely get outdated and are going to be completely gone. But people fight over it.
Well, I think, and also the divorce attorneys, remember, all they care about is making an extra $5. So they'd rather you guys fight. As attorneys, we find them, I'm sorry, I hope no one knows any divorce attorneys, but they're the bottom of the bottom of the bottom.
No, I agree with you 100%. They are right there.
So,
same as labor attorneys.
Yeah,
in California.
I've always been a corporate attorney, so I can't disagree with you. And class action lawsuit attorneys, you're talking, you're preaching to the choir here. But yeah, no, you're right. But I'll tell you quickly, I tried that. We had litigation that was over 2 years. The plaintiff was kind of crazy. I think he begged me to settle the case at one point, us to meet a year before he literally came, and he's like this tall, and I'm short, like 6'3" or 4, and begged me to settle this case. I said, I'm not your counsel. You have your own counsel. Go talk to them. And he's like, no, but you'll make it happen. And anyways, long story short, a year after that, before Christmas, I knew what my client wanted. They refused, and they're like, we're going to walk away. And the mediator's a retired judge, nice guy, but full of himself, like some judges. And I said, Judge, go to them and say, give us the extra blank amount. Merry Christmas. It's going to cost more in legal fees if this goes past Christmas. And he's like, Maury, they said they're not going. I said, go say Maury said to that same plaintiff who was such a jerk, but I knew he knew I could make it happen. Say, just up it by this amount. Merry Christmas. Let's all have a happy Christmas. And he's like, they're not going to do it. I said, Your Honor, please. He came back. He said, shit, in all these years, I've never seen such an argument work. I said, and I said, Your Honor, but it's a human argument. Maybe you've never seen a human argument. There is no ration to, but it's who wants to spend the holidays worrying about a piece of litigation as a plaintiff and as a defendant, But yeah, no, you're not picking on me. I've always gone reason, ration. And so but that's why the roomy stuff works. If you really adhere to it, and you kind of talk to other people's hearts and not just their minds, even when you're in the middle of a negotiation with,
it does,
it works.
It does. You're right. So again, that's also then, like you said, finding like-hearted people who are, on the same wavelength from the heart. That is where, they fuel that energy for you to be calm and collected and be more in touch with your essence and be more in touch with your soul, so you can start elevating and expanding. And this is where he's basically, now talking about it. Keep company with those who are spiritual to gain his grace and be more liberal. A body which does not contain a soul is like a sheath that holds a wooden pole. Now, a body does have spirit because the body is alive. It's moving around. It's doing what it's supposed to do. But if it doesn't have a soul, it cannot enjoy all these different essence that Rumi keeps bringing to us, that there is a love that you can connect to. There is a whole pool of souls who are connected to God, and you can actually get help from that. So in this case, he's talking about bodies who are a body which does not contain a soul is like a sheath that holds a wooden pole. A wooden pole, while hidden in the sheath, it might seem good. As long as it's in the body, it moves us around. But burning is the only use for wood. Eventually, you're going to have to go to the ground, or you're going to have to cremate you, or do whatever the hell, people want to do these days. That's all that body is good for. And the spirit in it, because that spirit never got elevated. With just a wooden sword, don't join this fight. Check first, or you'll regret your wretched plight. Now, it's, he's talking about the fact that we've got to figure, we've got to look within ourselves. So whether we have the real sword or we have a wooden one. So in order to get a wooden one, we have to make one. We just don't get it. We make it. That is us working on it. If yours is wooden, change it straight away. And change it means you change you straight away. But if it's a razor sharp, then join the fray. And the fray in this case is like people who are familiar with this sword. Now you have to learn how to use this sword. See the steps as he's actually putting it together? Saints have such swords among their armory. Just seeing them for you is alchemy. So he's like, now you have to look for these saints, for these connected souls, because just seeing them is like alchemy. That's something that, so Mr. Mohsen was in the class yesterday, that there is a hadith from Prophet Muhammad, which says that good for the person who saw me and good for the person who saw the person who saw me. And this line here is also another reason why Rumi likes that hadith, because he says that you have to start looking for people who are connected. So seeing them, just seeing them for you is alchemy. So then he goes into the fact that, saints have, So listen to this description once again. He's a mercy to the world of men. Now, in this case, this is what the connected souls or those saints are the ones who are saying this. He's saying that, he is a mercy to the world of men. What is, in this case, when he's referring to he, in this case, this is God, and it's referring to an ayah from Quran which says Rahmatun lil Alamin, and there is many places in Quran which says Rahmatun lil Alamin. Buy pomegranates that the grocer split, so that its mouth will show the seeds in it. So it's like, please buy it. Buy a pomegranate that that is a split one. It actually shows itself, so that its mouth will show the seeds in it. For generous laughter shows us openly the heart, a pearl within the spirit's sea. So he's kind of trying to give us some indications that a generous laughter of a connected soul is something that you actually get attracted to. Now, I'm sure you guys have had this experience, like perhaps, you know, an elder in the family or a grandfather or a grandmother is something that you have had seen them, you know, all of a sudden you wanted to see their laugh, or when they would talk, it would actually completely would bring you calm. The reason that is because they are at that level of, or at least they have reached the level. And of course, there are some grandma, grandpas, which, you know, you can't stand them. I know that too. But, you know, there are some that, you know, when you sit and you talk to them, you just want to listen. And the reason is that you are at complete harmony with them. And that is completely showing up. So those are the pomegranates, in this case, what Rumi says, buy the pomegranate that the grocer splits, that actually has shown itself and shown its beautiful seeds, so that its mouth will show the seeds in it. For generous laughter shows us openly the heart, a pearl within the spirit's sea. The tulip's laughter, though, display its sin. Rumi doesn't like tulips. Unfortunately, I know tulip is a beautiful flower, but this is why he doesn't like it. It says its mouth reveals the darkness deep within, because the, you know, inside of a tulip, when it's, you know, it blooms, it's dark. He doesn't like that. Whole gardens bloom when pomegranates smile. And in this case, he's talking about pomegranates, but he's referring to these connected souls. Is like the entire world blooms when they smile. To be like mystics, stay with them a while. So if you find them, just stick with them and stay with them as much as you can. Just like I said, when you actually find somebody that you want to listen to them, you just, I mean, it's possible. I know you guys have experienced this, that you meet somebody and then you're like, oh my God, I would never get tired of listening to that person, because, you know, it's cool. To be like, true mystics, for even if you should be made from stone, through mystics as a jewel, you'll soon be known. So it's like, regardless of what you were made of. So he's telling us that the form really doesn't matter. It's the soul that matters. Plant love of saints now firmly in your heart. Submit your soul to those who'll never part. While there's still hope, don't wallow in despair. Why choose the dark when there is sun up there? Your heart will lead you to the mystic way. Your body drags you to its cell of clay. Now, again, another indication as far as look at what the origins of these things are. Your soul comes from God. Your body comes from earth. What do you want to attach yourself to? If you attach yourself to an earthly thing, you will eventually die. It will eventually go away. So give your heart food from those in accord. Seek fortune from the ones who know their Lord. All right. And I'm done. So any questions, any comments, guys? Anyone?
A quick question, actually. You know the verse that we were on for a little while about in order to get into God's grace and be liberal. What's what's the Farsi? Like, what's the liberal? Is that a real translation? Is that the closest to the translation?
Hold on, let me see which line was it, because I gotta now find the Farsi one. It's right here, right? So where was it? Be liberal.
A little bit further up, 7:15. So, yeah, to gain His grace and be more liberal. Right there.
Oh, okay. Keep company with those who keep company with those who's spiritual to gain His grace. Okay. So what he says here is this. Let me actually liberal. So the word that he's translating, and I'm glad you caught that. Thank you. He's translating fatah. Fatah means somebody who is brave, or somebody who is a warrior. And in this case, he's talking about, I think what he meant by liberal is like somebody who actually brings liberation, or, helps that. But the word itself is fatah. That he's saying that, that's how you get.
And this translation, he's also trying to make it rhythmic.
Yeah.
So he's choosing words that they not necessarily good translation, but make it good rhythmic translation.
Yeah. But thank you for catching that. I actually had, believe it or not, I had made a note. I lost it, but I remember when I read that, I was like, oh, liberal,
Yeah.
conservative. I mean, Biden, Trump, what's going on here? All right. Any comments? Any questions?
Is the word fateh or fateh in Farsi?
Fatah. No, it's with a fe and te and ya, which has a kind of So it comes from fat.
Got it.
When you fat something, so when you get you
Conquer.
You conquer, yeah. All right. Okay, guys. Thank you so much. Thanks for
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody. Have a good evening. Have a good
Have
evening.
a nice day. Bye.
I'll see you guys next
Thank
week.
you.
Watch the movies, please. Watch it. It's fun.
I will.
All right. Put the kids to bed. Maureen, watch it.
They put me to bed. Good night. Have a good
Good
weekend.
night. Good night.
Everybody.